Podcasting from the Chicagoland area, this is Game On with Jackson Stuart, where we discuss men's lifestyle, focusing on sex, fitness, relationships, business, and more. We'll be interviewing the best of the best, the hot shots, and the rising stars in the worlds of modeling, fitness, cooking, and more. Influencers who are discussing keeping it sexy while at the top of their game. I'm your host, Jackson Stuart. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the game.
Follow Game On with Jackson Stuart on YouTube at Game On with Jack, on the official blog www.gameonwithjack.blog, and at the news store www.gameonwithjack.shop. Keep it sexy and game on.
This is Dale Valor.
This is Pamela Ross.
This is Trinasia.
And you're listening
to
Game On with Jackson Stuart.
Game On with Jackson Stuart.
Game On with Jackson Stuart. Killing them!
The game will challenge you. That is what separates those who win and those who lose. Obstacles are not unusual aspects of the game, but a part of it. In the toolkit of winning, adaptability is key. This is definitely a lesson taught to and by our guest tonight. The author-speaker Matthew Lawrence SCIGOUSKY was born in the Chicago suburbs. In many ways, he was born directly into adversity. At 6 months old, he had both legs in casts and was misdiagnosed with MS. As it turns out, a spinal tumor was the real issue. He underwent multiple surgeries on his left leg and spine all before the age of 10. This left Matthew with a permanently deformed left leg to go through life with. There was a choice made at a very young age. Matthew decided that you can do whatever you set your mind to, no matter the circumstances. This became embedded in his soul and has only gotten stronger throughout the years. He became a competitive ski racer in middle school and learned to adapt and compete in other sports such as wrestling in high school and track in college. After earning his degree in business from DePaul University, Matthew embarked on a career in medical device sales, becoming the youngest sales rep ever hired at Stryker Medical, earning Rookie of the Year and Rep of the Year in his first 2 years. After 28 years in the business and working for other companies, he has amassed multiple awards in sales achievement. Matthew developed a 3-book series called Unlocking Your Greatest Assets Through Challenge, Struggle, and Adversity. Teaching, inspiring, and uplifting readers through his writing has become a passion. Matthew is also our guest this evening. All right, guys, you've heard the introduction and the bio. Now join me in welcoming to Game On, the inspiring, motivational, and the indomitable Matthew SCIGOUSKY. Matthew, how are you today?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Cool. That is good to hear. And let's kick off. Can you let the audience know where they can find you, what social media, and by what username?
Sure. So on Amazon, you can find me under Matthew SCIGOUSKY. A lot of my books say Matthew Lawrence SCIGOUSKY, either one. But Amazon and then Facebook, just first and last name. Pretty much primary. Those are the primary two social media outlets I use, and all my books basically are sold through Amazon.
Now, as people heard in the bio, but just in case they missed it, where are you from and where did you grow up?
Sure. So I was born in the Chicago suburbs, actually LaGrange. My folks moved us out to Lake Tahoe, California when I was an infant. And so I pretty much grew up out in the Squaw Valley area until middle of junior high. folks got divorced, and being back from the Midwest, my mother moved my sister and I back to the suburbs of Chicago, and I basically finished up high school and went to college in Chicago, and pretty much have been here ever since.
Okay. Now, jumping into like the meat of who you are and what you bring to the table in terms of, helping guys level up their game. You were hit early on with what I think anybody would agree is adversity, and that is
Absolutely.
The misdiagnosis of a medical condition, a solution for the medical condition, which also left you, and to use your own words now in your bio, with one leg. Can you kind of, can you walk us through that moment that you got the news? What was that like?
Yeah.
And equally as important, what kept you from sinking? Because that's what I really want to help. You've got a great message. I want to get that out to people about getting hit with adversity and moving forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it hit me in childhood, and I don't even honestly have that much of a memory of it from when I was, like 2, 3 years old, and that's essentially I was given a misdiagnosis of MS. My left leg just wasn't developing like the way my right one was. It was shorter, and I'm 51 years old, so back in the 70s, it's just medicine was a little bit different than it is now. And by the time physicians figured out what was wrong with me, it had already done some pretty significant damage. But what I really had was a non-cancerous tumor in my spine that was entangled in my nerves and was basically cutting off the signals to my leg as I was developing. So I had it removed when I was about 5. But again, medicine in the 70s, I would say I had kind of a hatchet job done on my spine, and they never really got it all out. It grew back. I kept having issues as I was getting older. My mother, I would say I really owe a lot to her. She was just determined to figure this out. And she eventually took me to Stanford University, and I had it finally removed completely when I was about 10 years old. Now, prior to that, I had gone through probably at least a half dozen surgeries on my spine as well as my left leg, just to try and, I had some tendon surgery and trying to lengthen a little bit. So I spent a lot of years just kind of like honestly being scared of hospitals. And it's fairly ironic because I spent the last almost 30 years as a medical device sales rep in hospitals going into surgical procedures, which is what I was terrified of as a kid because I associate hospitals with pain. And that was really, every time my mom said, well, we got a doctor's appointment, I would be like, oh gosh, like I'm going to get poked or prodded or something. So it's interesting though, because as a kid, we're not we don't I think children, we don't really think in terms of limits. As kids, we think we can do anything, right? I mean, our imaginations are usually at their highest as kids. I grew up outside and didn't really watch much TV. You went outside to have fun and you created all kinds of environments and so going through all this stuff with my leg, I didn't really look at it and say, well, poor me. I'm not able to do anything. Again, my mother never held me back either. She got me on skis, and I learned how to ski, and I actually ended up making ski team, and then I worked my way up to where I was actually a fairly high level ski racer, and I just remember learning how to figure things out is the best thing that I'm actually eternally grateful for everything I went through because I learned how to really get good at adapting and overcoming obstacles and then just finding a way. And to do that as a kid, it's unbelievable how it's just helped me out so much later in life. Because I would tell you this much, I've gone through some other trials and tribulations as an adult that I would say were far harder than what I went through as a kid. And I just remember kind of like every time I've had to face a challenge or struggle, I'm like, come on, Matt, you went through far worse as, you went through some pretty hard stuff as a kid. You know what to do, and so that's really kind of the perception I developed as a child. That's why I'm so grateful for it, because I think so many people later in life, they don't really have that skill set. Adversity strikes them maybe in their 20s for the first time, and they don't know how to handle it. I had to deal with it very young and learned a skill set that got programmed in my mind, and it almost became second nature.
So, I think there's a lot to unpack there, and it's all like beautiful and totally worthwhile to go through. Hearing that as a kid, I know you said you were kind of young when it all kind of started, but you talked about like how you associate, and I think just about 90% of all adults do, unless you work at a hospital. Most of us think hospital, like we get traumatized, like we traumatize ourselves, like pain, discomfort, bad news. It's like going to the mechanic. Like you don't go to unless you're going in for a physical, and even then we're still a little apprehensive. We think it's going to be something bad, but you got over that. And I want to go through some of these tips about getting over adversity. Let's start there, because one of the things that I've talked about is like taking control of your health. And I think a lot of guys, by the time you had no choice. By the time you were dealing with your health, you were young and you had to. And it was your mom was running point on that because she was the adult. But as grown men, and as grown anybody, like getting in front of your health is important, but I think a lot of fear holds people back. What's a tip you can give people right now about getting over the fear or controlling the fear about your health?
Well, my favorite definition of health, you've probably heard this before, is always it's false evidence appearing real. That's what I consider fear. It's usually a fear is an emotion. It's just something that you feel inside. It's not necessarily like, danger is real. Fear is just a feeling. And the only way you can really tackle it is by embracing it. You have to walk into it. I always kind of like, you ever watch the Batman, where the Batman, I think it was the latest series that came out, Christian Bale. And it's the very first one where he falls in the cave and he's terrified and he just embraces these bats all flying around him. And he embraced his fear. And it's kind of similar to that. You just have to jump into it. I'll tell you what was, well, I don't want to get off topic here because you said like really like embracing your health. I had to embrace my leg, and by embracing it, I just said, okay, this is the way it is. And I don't have any left calf. My left foot doesn't even work. Half the size of my right. I have no flexion in it. Instead of looking at it and saying what I can't do, I looked at it and said, well, what can I do? And what I realized is there's a lot I could do. And so instead of focusing just on what doesn't work, I started focusing on what did work. And I got into the gym pretty early in life, kind of towards 8th grade, started lifting weights. And, freshman year, I made varsity wrestling team. And I just realized like, wow, okay, what if I just make the rest of my body so incredibly strong that my leg becomes almost irrelevant? I'm going to just learn how to adapt. And, right. So, and I think that's probably one of the biggest, I guess you said, giving somebody a tip is, well, how do you really want to live your life? Do you want to live with basically, having something that's holding you back, or using it as an excuse, or saying, well, I just don't have the motivation. I just don't have the drive, or, I'm never going to be able to get this 50 pounds off my waistline. Well, if that's how you think, well, that's what you're going to get. So I think like the most important thing about just embracing your health is it kind of goes along with everything else. Is just change the way your thinking is. And, people have heard that many times, but it is a choice. You have to make a choice. I can tell you the personal choice for me is really, it's pretty straightforward. I really enjoy life. I enjoy all of it. I enjoy the bad stuff. I enjoy the good stuff. I enjoy change. And at 51 years old, I'm actually more excited at 51 about the next 25 years than I was when I was 25 and the 25 years ahead of that. So if I want to enjoy that part of my life, I want to make sure that I'm really healthy, that I'm strong, and that I can do all the things that I want to do. So I can tell you, being in the, and this is another aspect, being in the medical industry, I have seen thousands of surgical procedures and other procedures. I've seen people far younger than me dealing with things that could be prevented. And I can tell you something, you do not want to spend your days like there's people who literally will go to the hospital every single week because they have some sort of condition, whether it's diabetes or just some sort of health issue. And you know things are going to come our way. Can't prevent everything, but I think it's important to at least say, hey, well, what can I control? And I at least want to put myself in the best possible position so I can do the things that I want to do.
There's the quote you said at the beginning. It was phenomenal. I mean, it was all phenomenal. But that, like, fear. Most fears. I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit. Most fears are just in our
Mhm.
heads. Danger's
Yeah.
real. Like, you see a pack of wolves coming at you. There's no question that that's dangerous. Like, there's no way.
That is danger.
Yeah. Fear is like, oh my God, what if this? What if that? What if they say that? Like, there's so much that we work up in our heads. And I think I heard,
Oh yeah.
most of your life, 90% of your fears never happen.
No,
And
it's something it's something you create.
and very few of us are ever really in danger. So I love that you use that quote. I had heard it before. It escapes me who I heard it from before, but I couldn't agree more that
Me
fears
as well,
imaginary.
but it's
Yeah,
yeah.
fears imaginary and danger is real. Now, I love. There's about 3 questions I ask every guest that I really love. One of which is, who are some of your influences? Because I mean, you've got such a wealth of of motivational aspects. Who does Matthew read? Who does Matthew listen to that
Sure.
continues, to refill that bank of motivation in you?
So as a child, it was actually I'm going to start with this just because it was so cool. One of my books, my third book in my series, released actually number one in inspiration as a new release, and it was in the same category as Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, and we were pretty close to one another, and I about crap my pants because he was one of my childhood idols. Arnold Schwarzenegger was one of my childhood idols. Him and Joe Weider that was what influenced me to really get in the gym and start working out. And I competed in bodybuilding as a early 20-year-old and did powerlifting, and I've just been active my whole life. But one of my idols and influences, and as a kid, now I will expand on that and say as an adult, the people I love John Maxwell for communication. Probably one of my favorites is Earl Nightingale, Think and Grow Rich.
Oh yeah.
Anybody
Oh yeah.
who has not read that book, I implore you to read it and then read it again and read it again. Yes. Oh, actually, did I say Earl Nightingale, or that was Napoleon? I'm sorry, that was Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich. Earl
Correct.
Nightingale. Earl. I got those mixed up. Earl Nightingale. Actually,
Well, I mean, they're like interlocked so much. It's easy to it's easy to mention one and slide the other one in there.
I'll give you why Earl Nightingale always comes top of mind, simply because the first time I heard his speech, which was the Strangest Secret, and if anybody
Yes.
hasn't heard that, it was released in 1956, Columbia Records. It became the number one selling non-musical album at the time, which is sold I think 1 million copies, which is pretty amazing back then. But the Strangest Secret is really just we become what we think about, and it is really at the core of everything in your life. But the cool story behind this is I had never heard that before, and about 10 years ago, I got a tattoo on my left shoulder, and I decided, all right, what kind of tattoo could I get that would be really cool? and I didn't want just some. I want something that had some meaning. So I just randomly took a King James Bible, opened it up, plopped my finger down on whatever it landed on, and what it landed on is what I was going to get tattooed. So it landed
Wow,
on
that's
Mark
bold.
9:20. Yeah. I could have landed on Revelations, right, and something like
Yeah, or
end
you
of
could have landed on
times.
like, you could have landed like, provided by the Gideons. You're like, oh man, here I go. I got
The four horsemen of the apocalypse. Like,
yeah,
I could have had
exactly.
that on my shoulder, but I didn't. It landed on Mark 9:23, which essentially means all things are possible for those who believe. And
Mm,
I was just like, oh yeah, that's right on
yeah.
the mark. And so you want to know what's really, really amazing. And so I have this really cool tattoo of Mark 29:23 on my right shoulder. And so when I discovered Earl Nightingale, probably, God, maybe like 7 years ago, I listened to it for the first time. If you listen to that album about halfway through, I've never heard it quoted, and he quotes Mark 9:23, and
Wow.
I got chills up my spine. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're and this is kind of back when I started having these ideas of really wanting to share my story, really wanting to, make a difference in the world, impacting people. And that was just to me a sign from the universe that, like, you got work to do, pal. So get to it. So yeah, I mean, it's a little side story of influences, but I like Neville Goddard as well. Um, Vishen Lakhani is pretty cool. Code of the Extraordinary Mind. He's got a new book out too. Jack Canfield is actually believe it or not, a little bit of a mentor of mine. I got to work with him a few years back, and he actually reviewed some of my work, and I got some great feedback from him. So those are just a few, but I like a lot of the old school people, and
You
some
know
of the
what I
newer ones. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say what I have found interesting, and I kind of feel, if I could be so bold, I kind of feel a little like the young Napoleon Hill, because young
Hmm.
Napoleon Hill, for those that don't know, um, he got tasked with interviewing people and finding
Hmm.
what made them really successful. And in doing the podcast for as long as I've done it, a couple of years now, I have found that every guest who is out there kicking ass, and I've been very blessed in having guests that are all kicking ass in their own fields, all share the same core. And that core is that they believe that what they believe is who they become.
Yep.
And that goes back to, like I said, that goes back to the Bible. That goes back to, any religion says that, regardless of who you pray to or kneel to. And
Hmm.
and if you bring that down to some of the great mental thinkers, of like the late 1800s or the early 1900s, 1920s, and so on, Carnegie, Ford, Napoleon Hill, Og
Hmm.
Mandino, who's another name that falls in that group. And so it's always, like you said, it, but then like sometimes you gotta hear it again. And
Oh yeah.
I love that those are some of your influences. I do want to jump on something that popped out while you were talking, and I
Sure.
really wanted to get your take on this. If I could be so bold, as traumatic as it must have been, it must still cause some discomfort and some issues in some way. Your leg sounds like it may have been the best thing that ever happened to you.
I actually call it my superpower. But
Now,
it took me a while. It took me a while to get there. But I had,
explain that
yeah,
to people, because I think
yeah.
some people would look at their leg and go, "Oh my God, if I lost the ability to use my foot, if I lost, the calf accessibility, I'd be devastated." But why is it? And they'd say, "Well, he's lucky because it happened so young." But I think that's very small-minded to view it that way. How have you turned that into your great superpower?
I will say this much. I had it was a there was a lot of things as a kid I went through, from getting bullied, really bad, by the way, and not just bullied, but beat up,
Right.
picked on. Kids can be mean, and but I'm a tough kid, and I didn't take that too well. So for a few years I was finding myself having to strategize about okay, well, how do I get this to stop? And I realized that, sometimes a bully needs to be punched in the face to get a taste of his own medicine. But I mean, but
Agreed. I agree with that.
yeah, I mean, not that I'm condoning any kind of violence or anything, but I really don't take well to people who, you will never rise in life by demeaning others. You will only diminish yourself. And so I would say a little hot button for me is if I ever see that, it doesn't go over very well. I've always been kind of a protector, but kind of getting back to your original question is, how do I view what most people would think is, I've even had some people say, oh, a disability. And I got to tell you, people who actually have real disabilities, missing leg, arm, some sort of spinal, mental, whatever it is, they really don't like to be called disabled. It's a term that I think we associate when we see something that doesn't work on someone, but I never considered myself that ever. And I could probably get one of those disabled stickers in my car if I wanted to, but I think I'd rather save that for somebody who really needs it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real thing though is with your, my legs in adversity. Turn your adversity, into an advantage. Turn it into your superpower. A lot of people look at their adversity and they want to become a victim. So you want to up your game. Stop being a victim. Don't define yourself by something that it's okay. A setback. My left leg doesn't work like my right. So what? I mean, I've had crazy thing is, you would think like, I got this messed up leg. I walk a little funny, and as a guy, right, we want to attract women. We like, or whatever it is, you want to go on a date. You want to talk about scary, like asking a girl out when you're in high school.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
You walk a little funny. I think I just owned it, and I learned to own it over the years. So you got to just accept yourself 100%, everything about yourself, and trust me, there's people who look like maybe they look perfect on the outside. Everybody's got something. Everybody does. And the best way to overcome it is you got to embrace you. You got to embrace everything about you. And when you do that, then you can kind of do the real work, the real inside work. So I call my leg my superpower because my left leg, it allows me to be creative, to find other ways of doing things. I don't think, I'm 5'10", 220 pounds. At 51 years old, I can bench press 400 pounds. I'm in pretty phenomenal shape. I got a 33-inch waist. I don't think I'd have any of that if I didn't have my left leg. Because
I'm sorry.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No.
I was gonna say there's the comedian, the writer, the talk show host Stephen Colbert. He has a great interview with Anderson Cooper. And Stephen Colbert, when he was young, lost his father and I think two of his brothers in a plane crash. And he talks about being grateful for the tragedies or for the adversities that happen in life. And Anderson Cooper's like, well, how do you accept that? And Stephen Colbert says, because to be grateful to be alive is you can't cherry pick your life. Like, I'm happy for this, but I'm not happy for that. He said, so to be fully human and to be fully grateful, you have to be grateful for the things that you would not normally want. And in hearing you speak of your leg and the adversity and the challenges and the bullying, it made you such a whole person, and probably made you a better person because you know what it's like to be on the receiving end of cruelty. And then therefore you wouldn't want that for other people. And then that goes to the whole thing about how do you tell villains from heroes? Villains and heroes both go through something traumatic. It's just the villain goes, everybody's going to suffer like I did. And the hero goes, nobody's going to suffer like I did.
Yep.
And
you nailed it. You nailed it.
And I want to ask you this. For people who, you're right, everybody's got something. I mean, there's people who are drop dead gorgeous or handsome internally, they have something going on. But for people who work with or are introduced to, or for example, like, you're about to go on the wrestling mat with somebody who has a obvious physical adversity.
Mm-hmm.
Give people 1 to 3 tips on how do you treat that person. Now, obviously people are going to say, well, with respect and everything. Sure. But sometimes you may want to do things for that person because you're worried about if they can handle it, like, oh, I want to, you're at the gym squatting 400 pounds or 600 pounds, and somebody might be like, oh my God, that guy's got one leg, etc. Tell people how they need to treat people with adversity, even if they have the best intentions. Let's assume we're not talking about people who want to be assholes.
Yeah,
but
be authentic. Be authentic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Be authentic.
No,
and don't hold back. Never hold back. Never hold back. That's that. I would say, like, I will. I can tell you when I wrestled in high school, I can tell you nobody held back. I don't ever remember any. I don't remember anybody. I don't remember anybody going light on me because I usually beat most of the people. So, I mean, and the first time I actually ever wrestled, I had no idea what I was doing. I had to cut weight 15 minutes before the match started, and I'm sitting here in a sweatsuit. My uncle got me involved in it, and and I got my butt kicked, like literally got my butt kicked. But I made it. I promised myself. I said there is no way I am getting pinned by this guy. I don't care, whatever it takes. It's not going to happen. And you know what? The guy couldn't pin me. I just like,
wow.
and I stayed in the match. I kept it close enough so there was no technical default. But I scored some points, and then he just could never pin me. And afterwards, he came up to me and he was like, wow, like I've never wrestled anybody so tough before, and I was just determined that was not going to happen. And I think I used that first match just to get better. I use the same principles I have, you learn, right? So when things don't work, learn from them. In fact, there's a tip for just about everybody. If you want to get really bad at doing something, do it the wrong way over and over again, all the time, and that's what you're going to get. You're never going to actually progress. Failure, which some people seem to think is a bad thing, is actually an amazing thing. It's part of success. When you fail, you analyze, you reflect, and then you make adjustments and you do it again. And you do that as many times as it takes until you figure something out. And eventually, you cut out the things that don't work. You're going to get really good at something. And I think I've always taken that approach with just about everything because, it's very rare that you figure something out the very first time.
Oh, I think it's like impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. It happens if anything, it's probably a fluke. but yeah, that's just reality. So, but people tend to get very discouraged when something doesn't work or, oh, I tried and it just didn't happen. Well, why didn't you do it again? And I think that's something that's where the perseverance and resilience comes into play. Those are things I like to call the assets of life. Those are 2 really good assets to develop because they'll carry you a long way. But yeah, anyways, I think that answered your question, right?
No, you totally did. And I something that I want people to take away from what you just said is, in addition to how to treat people, be authentic. If somebody's putting themselves in a situation to compete or to be challenge them and compete them as if they had no obvious adversity. Say you don't insult them, but I also like that you said hug failure, embrace failure.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna, and everybody's heard the quote, but really let it sink in. The light bulb took 10,000 attempts for oh my God, Edison. Oh my, I was gonna say Bell.
Exactly.
I'm gonna get my vendors mixed up. 10,000 times. I can't tell you that I've ever done anything in my life that took me 10,000 times to get right. I could tell you if I got maybe to 50, I'm like, this shit ain't working. But embrace that and really, failure is every time you fail, you're further than you were when you started. You've just crossed out something that didn't work, something else that didn't work, something else that didn't work. So I love that, and I would like to take a moment now to definitely jump onto. You're an author. You've written 3 books about inspiration and motivation. You've got another one, I think, dropping this summer. Can you give the audience a brief summary of your books and where they can find them and why they should find them?
Well, I'll say this: everything I write about, I've experienced, and I'm gonna say, if you're a nonfiction writer who wants to write about self improvement, um, in my book, in my mind, I don't really like reading people who haven't actually gone through it themselves. So, everything I write about, I've gone through the trials, the tribulations. It's not about just everything that's worked; it's also about things that didn't work and what you learn from it. But I started writing back in 2020, just inspirational poems, just to try and lift other people up. And I came up with an interesting concept. They're not really poems. They just kind of are disguised as poems. And they're really just pure inspiration and motivation. And I wrote about 50 of them. And I had a small book that came out back in 2020. And I learned the publishing process, and it didn't really do anything, but I really got the bug, and I just kept creating and grinding and developing material, and I put up all these how-to guides, and then about a year and a half ago, this is actually a great story. Sam Cromwell, which was the founder of Temple University, gave a really cool speech called Acre of Diamonds. And that speech created enough income for him to found Temple University. Acre of Diamonds is all about that, basically, like, everything that you need, you already have. And the story, I went off topic, but this is a cool story, and I think this will have a real impact on people. Um, is a farmer who got obsessed with diamonds, owned a farm, decided to sell the farm, travel all around the world, searching for diamonds, never found them. The guy who bought his farm was walking through kind of by a stream on the property one day, saw a bunch of shiny objects. Turns out it was a diamond farm, and the farm was like a diamond mine. And the essence of the story was just simply like, you might not think that you actually have what you need to start something. I guarantee you do. And so my books were born out of, I'm looking at my computer, and I developed all this content. And I said, holy crap, here's my acre of diamonds. Everything I need is right in front of me. And so
Mm.
my series called Unlocking Your Greatest Assets Through Adverse or Challenge, Struggle, and Adversity was born. The first book I came out with was called The Mindset Game. I self-published everything. And the Mindset Game is like literally my playbook. So if you like what you're hearing from me, you want to know how I've gotten to where I am in life, I basically put together a how-to guide. It's about 55,000 words. I've got a few different editions of it: hard copy, paperback, Kindle. But I've got worksheet exercises. And what I wanted to do differently than other self-help books out there is I like a lot of the books and authors that I follow, but I've never really quite found a guide that really, I think, most people can relate to. Because not all of us are professional athletes. Not all of us are billionaires, right?
Right, right.
And I wanted to put a guide together that I think the majority of people could relate to. I'm a successful guy, but I'm a self-made man. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have bigger bank accounts than me, but I pretty much do whatever I want in life, and I live an abundant life. And I wanted to put a guide together to show people how to do that. And so that's the Mindset Game. I think it's pretty cool. It's an easy read. I give real life experiences. So everything's backed up with a real life story, something I either went through or I'm actually doing right now. So it's authentic, and I think it could have a big impact on somebody. The other two books, Reveal Yourself, is basically kind of a book of poetry, but I call it instructional poetry. And it kind of takes you from a starting point to an end point, and how to get to where you're at to where you want to go. And each piece kind of has a certain type of reflection, of either overcoming some sort of struggle or how you think. And so it's about 85 poems in that book. There's some pretty cool quotes that go along with it. And then the third book, and that book was just recently turned into an audiobook, and it's super cool. It was narrated by award-winning narrators, Megan and Jonathan, or Jonathan and Megan Lee, and they did a fantastic job. They're going to actually narrate my third book, which actually just released about a week ago, It released #1 on Amazon new releases and inspiration, and it's called Assets of Inspiration. And what I did with this book is really cool. Same concept. It's kind of instructional poetry, but what I do is I group 3 different poems together, and then out of those 3, I talk about the different assets that are derived, and usually there's 2 or 3 of them, and I dive into basically one, how do you develop them, what are they all about, and then at the end of the book, I put together what you call your 401k portfolio of assets of life. And the reason, and I say this, if you have this kind of 401k portfolio, you never have to worry about retirement ever. You don't have to worry about how much money you have in the bank, because you can pretty much, you pretty much have the ability to do whatever you want in life. So I always say that you develop these type of assets. Examples are like, imagination, creativity, perseverance, resilience, confidence. There's probably, I think, close to 100 of them. And when you develop all those, they're not material, they're not real estate, they're not stocks, but they're the type of assets that allow you to excel in the arena of life. And the best part about it, well, I don't know if it's the best part, but one of the nice parts about it is when you develop them, all the cool stuff comes to you. So the things that people are usually chasing after, I want to have a really cool house or a car or this watch, or all material stuff, which really doesn't mean anything. When you do this first, all that stuff follows.
Nice. And so those books are, I know you said they're all on Amazon. Are they all, people could go and get, I know 2 of the books, they can get them right now as soon as they hop off the podcast, correct?
They're all 3 are available. All 3 are available. And they're all available in either Kindle format or I have paperbacks on all of them, and then 2 of them hard copies, and then one of them is actually the audiobook is out on Reveal Yourself. But every one of them is available in either paperback form or Kindle form.
Guys, you could go and get this book. You could pop it, you could download it, you could hear it driving into work, driving home from work, running, lifting at the gym. Don't sleep on this great info from, like Matthew said, somebody he's not just telling you from, the Sermon on the Mount. He's lived this stuff, right? So get on top of this, take advantage of it. And Matthew belongs up there with the Earl Nightingales and the Napoleon Hills. And
that's saying a lot.
Well,
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Let's, one of my other favorite questions to ask guests, and
Sure.
guests just love this question. And I say it sarcastically because they cringe. In keeping with the theme of sexiness, what is the sexiest thing about you?
This is something I used to joke about when I was, one of the things I'll say, I used to kind of like, I don't know if I did this to kind of compensate for my left leg when I maybe had a little more like insecurities about it. But I always told people, like, they're like, they always would say like, oh, geez, so sorry that happened to you. And I just said, hey, I go, God just did this to me because it just wouldn't have been fair otherwise. It was something I used to do to kind of like joke around and just, it was more of my own insecurities. But you know what? I would say, sexy to me is just somebody, it's having a confidence in yourself, in who you are. I know exactly who I am. I know exactly where I'm going. And I think of that I'm somebody who is driven by purpose. And that to me is what really makes somebody sexy, is, having that kind of substance inside.
One of the, I'd say with 99% of the time, and I've talked to models and photographers and dancers and I mean, people who, weightlifters, people who typically deal with their physicality is how they make money. And a lot of these models, what is your sexiest quality? And a lot of people you would think are going to say their bodies or their looks. It's always 99% of the time the answer has been confidence.
Mhm.
And that leads me to my next question. What to you makes a person sexy? Matthew, still with me? I can't hear you for a second.
I likes
There you
women.
go.
As a man who likes women, um, I find a woman who just owns it. Everything,
There we go.
no matter what she looks like, no matter she just owns it. And you know what? Actually, the other day at the gym, I saw this gal who was. There were all these younger girls wearing, their tight little shorts and tops, and you know, just trying to show off or whatever. And I saw this gal who was definitely a little weight. She was wearing sweatpants, but I just saw her working, and she was just in there working and getting after it. And I walked up to her and I just gave her a fist bump, and I just said, "Hey, you just inspired me," and it just put a smile on her face. And it was just like, oh man, like I thought that was sexy, not me, but her, just somebody who owns it, and is not going to let other people distract her from what she needs to do. So,
Yeah, everybody else is like doing, and anybody who's been in a gym enough times that you could tell, like, all right, you're the influencer working out, because you're in here in like, clothing that is not gym,
right.
not gym functional, versus the people that are like, they look like hell. They're wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt or a t-shirt. They're drenched in sweat. They're breathing heavy. Because those people are working out. Like they are,
Uh-huh.
they are building a better body. They're not over here with a damn, tripod or cam stick trying to get the best view because so I totally feel you on that one. It is now time for our quick game
Oh,
where
okay.
where I like to give guests a chance to run through some entertaining questions. Matthew, are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Don't think about it. Just answer cake or pie.
Pie.
What kind?
uh Chocolate, French silk. That's one.
Oh, you're one of those people. I'm a fruit pie guy.
Sure.
Um,
We could have gotten some trouble on that one. I could have went
yeah, we could have.
across.
That's always a question where I'm like, let's see how this answer goes.
Obviously, you know where my head was at. Okay, let's
Yeah,
keep going. Keep
100%.
going.
If you were a singer, what would you sing on your first day or first concert?
If I was a singer,
Yeah.
Journey, Don't Stop Believing.
Great song. Awesome pick. Love that. Favorite time of the year?
Favorite time of the year, fall.
You are a Chicago guy. There you go.
Yeah. Do you know how I get the weather? The weather. I love 60 degrees and a nice
Yep.
breeze and the sun out. Like there's a stretch. That's my kind of weather.
Yes. Anybody who wants to experience extreme weather, live in Chicago for you. I know people are like, oh no,
Actually,
but in California, Arizona, it's like 100. No, go to Chicago where you can get 100 degrees, and then like 5 months later, you
no,
get like
don't,
polar vortex.
don't, just avoid it.
If you're on an island, you get to pick 3 books to read. What would they be?
Oh, okay. 3 books on an island. This is a good one. Let's see. I would read The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale.
Nice.
I would bring The Autobiography of a Yogi by Yoga Honda. That is one, just a little frame of reference. Steve Jobs, only book he ever had on his iPhone, and everybody at his funeral got a copy of it. Highly recommend. There you go.
And did you ever read Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee?
Yes, Have it.
Great book. And I picked it up. It was, it's on the eternal list. Like, I gotta read it. One day I picked it up and fell in love with it. Batman or Superman?
Superman.
One food for the rest of your life.
One food for the rest of my life. Boy, that's tough. Ribeye.
Once again, a Chicago guy. You can, yeah. Can you name 4 of the Three Stooges?
Oh gosh, that's pretty funny. 4 of the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Because there was 2, right? That were this was it Curly who was a double? Ed, Mo, Curly, and then I don't remember the right. Ed, Mo, and Curly.
Wait, Larry. See it,
Larry,
Mo, Curly, Joe, and Shemp. So technically, really 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while, but that one. Yeah, you stumped me. You stumped me. I used to watch that as a kid all the time.
It's either that question or if I ask somebody to name 4 of the 7 dwarves, that one throws people off real quick.
Don't ask me that. Okay.
My ultimate favorite question, and to some degree you've answered this already, but I would like to know, is there anybody on a personal level, somebody that you've seen repeatedly, who inspires you?
Oh gosh, that's I don't know if I could just pick one person, but there's actually a guy. There's a guy on LinkedIn named Steve Ferrari, and his posts always come up, and he's got I think he's got ALS. He's in a wheelchair, so he's got the nerve condition or nervous system condition where he doesn't have total control over his body, so he has a hard time walking. But he started a thing called he basically just since he serves the disability community, people who either spinal cord injuries or facing or going through something, just talks. He sounds funny. It's like I think where it takes so much courage to kind of get up in front of people when you talk funny and you don't exactly move the right way. That just takes courage. And I always respect courage. So somebody you probably never heard of before, but I see his posts a lot and just always love. The guy's got a smile on his face and he just gets after it. He does things at the gym and, he inspires me.
I've always found the people who appreciate life the most are the people he would think have the least amount of life to appreciate.
Yeah, that's some good stuff right there. Yeah, very true.
Good people, sexy people. That wraps up our interview with the inspiring, the brilliant, the motivational, the indomitable. I can go on and on with the adjectives. Matthew SCIGOUSKY. Matthew, tell people one more time where they can find you.
Go on Amazon, type in my name, Matthew SCIGOUSKY. I know it's a little bit of a mouthful, but all my books will pop up. You can read my bio. If you want to find me on Facebook, my Facebook page, I just put up usually things to do with writing, and you can actually find a lot of individual writings on there too. So just type in my name, and I love hearing from readers too. So if you end up getting a book and you want to communicate with me, I always share my email address or just shoot me a direct message, and I'm really good about responding to that kind of stuff.
Matthew, thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll talk soon.
All right. It was great. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate it.